This week on Popular Hot Rodding Television, we'll learn what a stroker engine is and why they're so popular with today's performance crowd. Cam and Dean answer your viewer questions. And where did the editors of Popular Hot Rodding magazine build and then dyno test all those great project cars? Stay tuned and find out.
Your science projects are beginning to look a little fruity.
Hey, lay off, man. This is a good visual. Welcome to PHR TV. I'm Dean Scusa.
And I'm Cameron Evans.
It's an excellent visual for strokers. I went over next door to the Mullet Brothers shop, got some clear PVC pipe from one of their new hookah projects, and watch, I'll show you what stroke's all about here. Put your hand there, and I'll come up here. Perfect. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I see.
Now let's add some more volume to our cylinder.
Okay, so I'm supposed to pour these things in now?
Yeah, pour them all in.
I think I'm getting this.
You can see we got perfect.
Yeah, you filled up more cheese.
We've hydraulicked. But you get my point. You can get a lot more volume by a stroke. They say that nothing beats cubic inches, but how we go about attaining those cubic inches can make a huge difference in your car's performance.
You know, the automotive aftermarket now has castings to where you can put bigger parts in engines. Used to be you'd have a 350 and it was hard to make a 383. Now you can buy a block or a crank that makes all those dreams possible. It's really free power for the money.
This thing's sour. Let's learn the principles about bore and stroke. Pipes, explain this, man. I can't talk with this thing in my mouth.
Dude, look at the mess you made, though.
All piston engines rely on two basic design ingredients to define themselves: bore and stroke. The piston lives inside the bore, and the distance it moves within that bore is called the stroke. Both the bore size and the length of the stroke account for the engine's displacement, and both of these elements carry distinct characteristics based on their dimensions. The bore diameter is responsible for harnessing the power created in the combustion chamber. As the chamber fires and the air-fuel mixture expands rapidly, the piston is forced down into the bore. The larger the bore is, the greater the force can be pushing the piston down. The stroke relates to how far the piston can be pushed down in turning the crankshaft. It also defines displacement and works like a handle in propelling the crankshaft. The longer the stroke is, the more torque potential there is in the engine design. It would seem to any hot rodder that maximizing both bore and stroke would result in the largest engine and therefore the most power. Technically, this is true. However, enlarging the bore and lengthening the stroke have some engineering drawbacks. When an engine ignites the air-fuel mixture in the combustion chamber, the flame must travel across the bore to ignite all of the compressed air and fuel in the chamber. Naturally, this takes time to occur. A large bore requires more time for the burning process to occur, and this will have an impact on the ignition timing. In fact, research has shown that in most common applications, a bore ceiling of around 4.5 inches is about as large as you should go to maintain a complete burn on pump gas. If the bore is too large, the piston will not have sufficient time at top dead center to burn the mixture effectively and make the most of its design potential. The stroke length is also a compromise. Certainly, we're enthusiastic to want the longest stroke possible to maximize displacement, but the penalties must be addressed. The longer stroke will deliver increased torque, but the longer throws on the crankshaft and the longer connecting rods or pistons required to work in concert with it all weigh more. When we're talking about a rotating assembly, weight is our enemy and will restrict the ability of the rotating assembly to spin faster and make more power. These weights all multiply dramatically with RPM, so we must find a happy medium between rotating mass and stroke length.
In the case of this 67 Chevy 2, don't let that little 327 badge fool you. This thing has 406 cubic inches of Hans Fustel small block power, and it's done it with a 3.8-inch stroke. Now combine that big arm with the big tire on this car and such a lightweight car where you're still remaining with a small block, and it's an equation for a really fast drag car. This car's run 795 at over 170 miles an hour. Pretty impressive stuff.
You know, drag racers found out years ago that a long stroke is exactly what the doctor ordered to get their cars to accelerate from a standing start. A longer stroke is all about torque. Now, true, guys with a bigger bore or a D-stroked engine make a lot of power too, and they could actually run more RPM to the lights. But in a drag race, it's all about that first 60 feet, which equates to all about torque. Now, small block owners found out that these same principles apply to their vehicles as well, so they started stroking theirs. I'd say the 3D3 kit's got to be the most popular out there, and for a couple of reasons. One, affordability. We got a cast scat crank here. It costs about $200 right to your doorstep, so you can see it's really inexpensive. Now, there's a couple of ways to skin the cat, or the mouse in this case. A lot of guys prefer to use a standard length 5/7 rod, or some guys use a different pin location in their piston and run a 6-inch rod. You can see I line them up here. It's 300 thousandths difference in the rod.
With that longer rod, and especially with the longer stroke that comes from that big crank, you're going to need to clearance the inside of your engine block. Now, that was always a problem in the past for small block fans because they'd get an old casting, take it to a machine, and spend $500 to $600 with him, and sometimes it wasn't his fault, but he would hit water inside the pan rail, maybe because of casting shift. Well, now we've got these new blocks from Bill Mitchell and World Products. It's called the Motown, and believe it or not, it is pre-clearance to make as much as 443 cubic inches. Now, where you need to clear specifically is where the rod bolt would swing by, and especially in here on the inside of the cylinder bore where the beam of the rod might hit. Now, with more cubic inches comes the requirement for a bigger cylinder head, and specifically a bigger intake runner. Now, you can see from this stock head, it's pretty small, but just a little bit bigger on this Edelbrock head, that'll help you if you're going from, say, a 350 to 383 cubic inches like most guys do with a small block stroker. We'll be right back.
Coming up on popular hot rodding television, Cam and Dean continue their talk about stroker engines, and we'll get a behind-the-scenes look at the PHR Tech Shop.
Hey, welcome back. Well, it's our favorite part of the show, Dear Cam and Dean, where we take a look at your viewer email and respond to it or answer some of your questions.
You know, a lot of letters are getting much more positive than when we started doing this segment. You know, my personal hygiene has improved a little bit.
Well, let's get to it. This message comes from Emil or Emil, I'm not really sure.
I couldn't tell you.
Dean, would you please address the growing problems and safety issues connected with illegal street drags as compared to racing at an NHRA or other certified facility? You would do a great service and maybe save a few lives and a lot of injuries. Thanks. Yeah, you know, I hate to sound like a broken record here, but, you know, you hear a lot of people talking about it. It's not legal to race on the streets. And I'll tell you what, when they came out with that Fast and Furious film, it made me furious. I mean, what's the point of glamorizing something that's illegal? What do you got?
Okay, this next letter comes from John Fenska. It says, loves the show. He's a 51-year-old Corvette owner, and he's been fooling around with cars ever since he was a teenager. He says the show's helped to understand a lot of things that he's able to get some good answers for. He still doesn't know what a 23-degree cylinder head is. He even asked at one of the booths at Pomona last year, and they couldn't explain it either. What are they talking about? Now, what we talk about when we say that is on a small block Chevy, the valve angle of the intake valve is 23 degrees tilted over. Now, the more that valve gets tilted over, the more you can flow past the head. But the only problem is that, let's say on an 18-degree head, that all the valve train basically that was built for 23-degree heads doesn't fit. So if someone's trying to sell you a set of 18-degree heads, realize that you're going to have to bolt on another set of rockers, and you're going to have some offset lifters. It's a little trickier than you think.
Cool. All right, the next one comes to us from David Uridel, and he writes, Dear Cam and Dean, love your show. I noticed that you guys have some pretty expensive hobbies and lifestyles. I always see or read about Cam and his cars and motorcycles, and Dean, you campaign a fuel car, which I'm sure costs an arm and a leg to field. Are you guys knocking off banks during the week or what? A curious fan. Well, David, it is expensive to operate a fuel car to the tune of over $2 million a year, and Cam's got go-karts and motorcycles, so we have to supplement our income in some ways.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, Kenny Bernstein, Forever Red Tour Jackets, $150. He's never coming back. Come on, form a line right here. Come on, I'm making a commission off of this stuff now. I get $5 a jacket. Come on in. Yo, anybody in there? I'm gonna do the nasty.
Dean, I never knew that that's what you actually did. I always wondered where the other money was coming from. If it was gambling in Vegas or...
I don't know if I'm real crazy about having this aired, publicly, but yeah, it's expensive stuff. If you want to get in this mailbox, visit our website at phrtv.com, and maybe we'll read your question on the air. We'll be right
Forget that.
back.
I'm proud of my jobs.
Yeah, well,
You should be proud, too.
I don't know. It's embarrassing.
Still to come on popular hot rodding television. More on stroker engines, and we'll see what's cool in the PHR Tech Shop. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to PHR TV and the Stroker episode. This 65 Corvette's obviously a pretty rare car. Make it a big block car, and it's even more valuable. But with 704 cubic inches, a stroker motor, man, I don't even know where to start classifying it. This is Rick Dorton's drag car. He runs on a lot of the street legal circuit. It's still got roll-up windows, flip-up headlights, pretty trick. But the coolest part is that it makes probably 1,600 foot-pounds of nitrous power. And that's why it's got such a big tire. The two match each other pretty well. Let's learn more about stroker engines and how and where they actually make power.
The correct stroke for your project is determined by many factors, but the weight of the vehicle receiving the engine is a big part of it. A heavier vehicle will require a nice long stroke to move effectively from a standing start or to pull hard out of a corner. The RPM capability of such an engine may be limited by the heavy rotating mass, so the other parts of the engine that are RPM sensitive, like the camshaft, cylinder head ports, and intake manifold design, should all be designed around the RPM capability of the engine. Luckily, aftermarket manufacturers know the benefits of long strokes and the importance of lightweight rotating assemblies, so many aftermarket stroker cranks undergo extensive lightening procedures. This gives some of the RPM capability back to the engine, but it still takes time for the crank to go through a longer stroke. Again, careful research and teaming of components can result in tremendous performance. Most full race cars are lightweight, so most of the professional racing engines we see are big-bore, short-stroke combinations that have the capability to run and breathe freely at high RPM. For the street, we don't normally see very high RPM, and our cars are usually quite heavy when compared to race cars, so a little extra stroke doesn't hurt. Owners of the 383-inch Chevy small blocks, which are stroked 350s, would agree that having more stroke on the street is always a good thing. Engine builders have found that a low-compression stroker engine designed to run on pump gas is the best way to improve street performance. The larger cubic inches and increased mechanical advantage provided by the longer stroke increase the torque available to move heavy muscle cars off the line or out of a corner quicker. And that's precisely what we're after.
We spent most of the show talking about Chevy stuff, but we really do need to mention the Fords, and especially the 347-inch small block combination. That starts with a 302 because it's a heck of a lot lighter than, let's say, a 351 Windsor or a 351 Cleveland. The loss in inches really isn't that much. Now, Scusa, you race a 426 Hemi, but it's a stroker engine, right?
Yeah, it's important to remember we have a 500 cubic inch limitation, so we designed the dimensions of our motor to fit within that realm. And there's a number of ways of doing it. The way we do it, and it's the most popular way of doing it, is a 3/4 stroke crank. In other words, 750 thousandths of an inch longer than stock stroke, a smaller than stock bore, 4/187 compared to a 4/250. God, I'm just sound like Wall Street over here. And a 3/16 longer rod. Now, the other popular method is a 5/8 stroke with a 1/8 inch rod and a stock bore, 4/250. That's 498 cubic inches. Now, that runs great to the lights, but you give up a lot of torque down low, and that's why we run 3/4. We prefer that extra torque.
Now, Dean, when it comes to building big block Chevys, there's really no cheap way to do it. This is a 555-inch bracket engine from Rear & Morrison, and it makes about 900 horsepower. And part of the reason that it's so expensive, like right around $15,000, is that you have to use forged parts. Earlier, we showed you that little 383 scat crank from Doug Herbert. It's a cast piece, and it can afford to be a little cheaper because it doesn't have as much weight going around. This thing's slinging all sorts of weight, so you can only use the best parts. Another thing to think about in terms of big block Chevys, once you get past 500 inches, don't even bother with a dual plane manifold because it really just acts as a choke on the engine. We've found out and tested it. Like this, a single plane is the only way to go, and these days it's almost as cheap to build a 540 as it is to build a 454.
Yeah, one thing, if you're going to invest $15,000 into a motor, don't forget about your fasteners. ARP makes some of the best fasteners currently available, especially in the rotating mass like rod bolts and whatnot. It's just an insurance policy. Buy good quality pieces like these ARP fasteners. Now, speaking of good quality pieces, let's take a look at this week's Rotting Marketplace.
Get the Edelbrock catalog by calling 800-FUN-TEAM. Inside, you'll find the world of performance that Edelbrock has brought you for over 60 years, including over 55 new products like crate engines, E-Tech cylinder heads, shock absorbers, and more manifolds than ever before. Edelbrock has one of the most extensive performance lines in the industry. You know the number, 800-FUN-TEAM. When building an engine, driveline, or chassis, we recommend using ARP fasteners. They're much stronger than stock and are made to exacting tolerances so they fit perfectly. To install exhaust headers or most any accessory, ARP stainless steel fasteners are the answer. They're polished to a brilliant luster that won't rust or corrode. For long-term reliability and everlasting good looks, you can't beat ARP. Need parts for your classic Mustang, Camaro, Chevelle, El Camino, Malibu, or Firebird? Then get your free catalog from National Parts Depot, the nation's fastest restoration parts supplier. Most orders delivered complete in just 1 to 3 business days. Call 866-425-FAST now for your free catalog. NPD, the wise choice. We'll step into the PHR Tech Shop next on Popular Hot Rodding Television.
Dude, did those bikes get here, the Triumphs?
I saw the Mullet Brothers on them 25 minutes ago, and I haven't seen them since.
That's not a good sign. Hey, welcome back. You know, in the magazine business, magazines are not just comprised or made up of other people's cars. They actually have in-house facilities where they could do build-ups or brake swaps. They have to have an in-house facility to do these things.
Yeah, at PHR, we have a tech center that's built into the side of our editorial facility. A lot of the Prime Media magazines use them, but we keep it pretty busy on the chassis dyno. Check this out.
Bolt-on horsepower is top of the mind for many enthusiasts. Popular hot rodding editors scribe monthly articles on testing and tuning everything from intake manifolds and cylinder heads to exhaust. And how do they justify all these numbers and facts? They do this from their on-site Street Rod and Performance Group Tech Center, shared with the Street Rod Repair Company owner, Barry White. Thanks to Auto Lifters, DynoJet, and Craftsman, they've built a well-equipped dream garage so that subscribers can read the progress and see the photos of their favorite build-up.
A lot of the installation work that we do and as much of the installs that we can do on our project cars in-house, we will do. The Tech Center is conveniently located in the exact same building where we write the magazine. So if we can do our photography and our installation and our homework here, transferring that into print is a whole lot easier with the Tech Center being on site. One of the things that Popular Hot Rodding was famous for in its history was we were one of the few magazines that really went out and tested a lot of the vehicles that we worked on. Luckily, with the advent of in-floor chassis dynos like the unit that we have here, we don't have to go to the drag strip to see if we can make a difference at the rear tires where it really counts. It's still not as good as drag strip testing. We'd still prefer to go out and run at the drag strip whenever we can, and we do. But for what we're trying to accomplish, especially trying to duplicate conditions, of course, at the drag strip, you're dealing with things like traction and air and everything else that you deal with. Here, we have a little bit more of a controlled environment, and we can see the raw data and the raw power that we're producing at the rear tires by using the dyno.
Basically, the editors are banging on my door. They always want to get something done because it's a lot easier for me to do an install than for them to take it somewhere to have somebody install it. Therefore, they're always on me to get something done. We've got a long-term Suburban project in there. It's a fuel injection, fuel lines have to be plumbed. It's a very intense, long, drawn-out project. We're getting it done, but it's definitely a filler project.
Richard Berg's Impact, the 2001 Grand National Roadster winner, was designed and built at Barry White's shop, where the editors get first look at some of SRRC's new rides.
Just a real good marriage, I think, between the Tech Center and having a hot rod shop here. We can, it makes it, I think, both of us a little more versatile. Not only that, but we appreciate a lot more what goes into the magazine end of it, and I think they appreciate, and I've been told that, they now appreciate what it takes to have a hot rod shop.
So next time you read an article in Popular Hot Rodding magazine, know that these staffers have done their homework.
Cam, I'll tell you what, one thing that doesn't need stroking is this bike here, this new 955i Triumph Daytona. Man, I'll tell you what, this thing's fast enough. If it was stroked, it'd scare the crap out of me.
You know what I was thinking about? My Bonneville, I could probably do one of those, deals like you see on those videos. They got those videos from New Jersey where the guys go on the street and they grab the front brake and they do the big old nose wheelie. Except the only problem is I've crashed so many things on this show.
Hey, we're best friends, right?
Yeah.
And like a friend should tell another friend if there's something going on.
Yeah.
Dude, you got a booger the size of a Cocoa Krispie in your right nostril. Well, hope you learned something about strokers. I'm sorry, I had to tell you. Right now, we're going to go outside and do some wheelies. See you next week. Oh, God.
Next week on Popular Hot Rodding Television, Cam and Dean show us the difference between cast and forged alloy wheels and how to fit them to our cars. We'll visit the annual GM Toy Day to see what hot pieces the General's been working on. And why do they call this stunning Ford coupe Agent Orange? Tune in and find out. Subscribe to Popular Hot Rodding Magazine, your source for the rod and performance scene, and save 75% off the single copy rate. Each supercharged issue is packed with killer muscle cars and street rods, the latest performance parts, and tuning tips to make your car look cooler and go faster. Plus, if you order now, you'll receive the latest issue of Popular Hot Rodding absolutely free. If you like what you see, you'll pay only $9.97 for 11 more issues. America's performance publication, Popular Hot Rodding. To order, call 877-9-RODDER today. If you'd like more information on Popular Hot Rodding Television and the products presented on the show, visit phrtv.com.